Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Morning.
Morning, Mr. Daffis.
Hey, Vic. How are you, buddy?
Right.
In the car commuting, so off camera, but listening attentively.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Who remembers that old tune? Good morning. Good morning. And you.
Oh my God, are you the only one that's had coffee?
Oh, I know, right? Two cups already.
Hmm. Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Deb Engel, our new member of the Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee, and also Malia Herman, our new member of the Township Committee. And the rest of you are old, so it doesn't really matter. So today, as usually the first meeting of the year, we kind of look at what we've done over the past year, and we're going to deal with those, but we have a few items to talk about first. So we're going to talk about the floodplain ordinance, the Maplewood tire parking, assuming the mayor's going to jump on, and then the new recycling printable calendars, and then we'll get into the rest of it. So on the floodplain ordinance, we've talked about this in the past, Paul. We asked you to work with Jennifer. Jennifer has shared with me, and I shared with the committee, this rather long ordinance. So would you just explain how this is part of a state mandate and municipalities across the state are doing this, and give us some comfort, and then we can move forward and bring it to the township committee?
Mr. DeLuca, thank you. So it is a rather long ordinance, and this is DEP's answer to climate change. You know, they're concerned with the rapid change in our climate, and this is a way to get ahead of it. You know, this ordinance does a few things. I think, first of all, it raises the base flood elevation in areas that are designated as part of our floodplain. It raises that base flood elevation up to 3 feet in some locations from our FEMA mapping. And that means, what does that mean? That means if you're going to construct a new dwelling unit, a new building, a new structure, or you're going to modify your existing structure more than beyond 50%, that you're going to be subject to these regulations. The other thing that this ordinance does is it designates a floodplain manager and requires tracking of, you know, incidents and rates of flooding. You know, so it forces the town to get ahead of this and to actually stay on top of it and track things. So I think it's a good ordinance. DEP was actually looking to have this passed last year. And we're a little behind the eight ball there, so I would encourage the township to move forward with this.
Paul, where are the areas in town which would be covered by this? Donnell Road that backs up to East Branch of the Rollway?
Yeah, obviously all of our main tributaries, the Crooked Brook, East Branch of the Rollway, Lightning Brook, any place you have a natural stream that's significant in size that would have an associated floodplain and riparian area. That's really what this is geared towards.
And I know when you talk about the flood, the height elevation, I know down the shore, if you want to build something, you have to be, the first floor has to be off like 13 feet high. That's what we're talking about here. So if someone was to do 50% more of a property, they would have to raise the house.
Yeah, if they're subject to this ordinance and they're building new, they would have to, consider raising at least 3 feet above the current mapping. And I think it's a good thing. It's part of resiliency and flood proofing. So it's planning for the future and where we think the climate's going to be in the future.
And who would be the floodplain manager?
I think Darius right now
Isn't Darius the person? Yeah, okay.
is designated,
Mhm.
but of course I would assist him in any way I can and as needed.
Okay, and this is the model from the state, and municipalities are we required to adopt this?
We are required to adopt this. We're allowed to modify it, which we did. I think this has been scrutinized by a lot of different departments. I know the Niche Group has looked at this, Mr. Palmer's, and certainly engineering's looked at this. I think there's been a lot of hands on this and a lot of people have looked at this. So, it's been thoroughly vetted.
Anybody have any questions?
Is there information about how we have modified it for Maplewood?
We could track changes. Obviously this is based on the model ordinance, and that's probably something that if we look at track changes, we could probably identify how it's been modified and changed. I would say the body of the document is in accordance with DEP, but there's certain language and certain definitions that may have been modified or altered. I would say it's substantially the same as DEP's model ordinance, though. But yes, if you're interested in that, we could produce the document with track changes, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, if buildings and code have had input in this, I'm curious to know what that was.
Okay.
That would be really important for us to know, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll put this on for discussion at the Township Committee on January 21st. And in the meantime, Paul, we have the clean copy. If you can work with Jennifer in getting us the track change copy.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, Maplewood Tire Parking. Mayor, you're here.
Yep.
And the Chapman's here. Welcome.
Good morning. So I sent a note, and it's been an ongoing issue that Maplewood Tire will put all of their customers' cars across Hilton Avenue, all the way going to Tuscan and all of Vermont. And it's become such a problem that residents are now waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning to park their cars in front of their homes so that they have a place to park their car. And it's not sustainable and it's not fair. During the holiday, when on the day that, or at the end, after the holiday, there were 2 cars parked in front of my house, another car parked.
I have a flu shot
Rob,
follow-up scheduled
Rob.
for my infant today, but he's
Hold on,
a
let me
little
see
under
if
the
I can-
weather, so I don't think he.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Such that it's actually not safe to come out of the driveway because you can't see the traffic coming as you exit your driveway because there's so many cars parked and it's a daily occurrence. So I know that there are other areas in the town where there's permit parking, there's limited time parking, I'm not sure what option we can do, but I think it's unfair that residents can't park in front of their houses, or if we have contractors or visitors, they can't park close to us. So I would love to see some other result.
Yeah, so
Mayor?
I brought this so that Paul could be aware and we could do what we do. Thanks for coming on, Ms. Chapman, for filling in the information this committee needs to know to discuss it. I think we may not be able to solve every problem on this one, but you know, and that's a long-standing business. It's been here a long time doing that. So we'll evaluate it. And Paul, if you could see what the situation is, and it may be switching sides of the street parking, it may be getting, you know, other places to park or working with the business as well. So, because they
Well,
have
Mayor,
that corner across the street, Paul, that they also use.
Yeah,
I
well-
passed this location many times and I would agree with Ms. Chapman. It's very congested with parking. You know, we could look to see if there's an engineered solution, but this may come down to a zoning or code issue by itself. It may. So I'm probably gonna have to look at involving that department as well.
Yeah, and I would say, Mayor, just to be fair, like I've lived here 18 years, it's become so excessive, right? So,
Okay.
right?
That's good. That's good to know, because yeah, it makes a difference if you just moved in. And if you've been there a while. So it's gotten just a lot worse, is what you're saying. So
Yes.
So a couple other things. We did institute some merchant parking up on Springfield Avenue. We could take a look at that, which would allow stickers to go on to the employees' cars, and they can park in areas where beyond the limits. So for example, I think up in that area, it's 2-hour parking on Springfield Avenue. In the parking lot by Maple Crest, it might be 3-hour parking, but with these stickers, an employee can park longer without getting a ticket. So we can look at that also. And in other areas, we've put 2-hour parking, which does create a turnover. And then, as we did last night, we had to make sure that residents have the ability to park there longer than 2 hours. They can park one car there. So it is a problem up and down Hilton. Even, you know, in near Prospect, we have similar kinds of problems. So,
Yeah.
but we can take a look at a couple of these different options.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is there's not a desire to park all the cars. It's inconvenient for them potentially, I don't know, to park all the cars in the lot because they'll have to move them out. So just spreading them out around the neighborhood then inconveniences everyone else, right? So I'm sure there's a solution to it. There may be an opportunity for the township to even monetize something, but I know that I would just love to be able to park in front of my house. So thank you.
It's going to take a little while to work this out. We'll have the police go over and talk to them too. I mean, you know, the mayor said this is a long-standing business. A lot of us bring our cars there, so we know the situation. We know what it's like to get there and not be able to find parking, even to line up to get your car service. So, so give us a little time to work on this. But we hear what you're saying.
Thank you. I'm gonna drop now.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
You don't want to stay for the other rest of the hour and a half?
I'm messing around and take your job if I do, so I'm gonna go.
Okay. All right. All right.
Thanks.
Okay, Deborah, you wanted to raise the printable calendars. I did find one.
I found it now too. I was just putting that
Okay.
on there because it wasn't on when I had initially emailed, but they're
Okay.
up. And at the comms committee, we talked about just creating like an annual like calendar of things that we always do every year, like that kind of calendar. So we were like, remember to post it before the
You know,
new year.
just one thing on that calendar, we had another, I don't know if it was the flip side of that, which talked about what kinds of plastics to recycle. And I must say, sometimes I'm challenged between the remembering if it's 5 or 6. So it would be good if we're going to do more of those calendars, just to note what kind of the numbers of the plastics.
Yeah, we could, maybe we should replicate the thing we put in the tax bills when we first changed the dual stream with the information on it that could go. Pat, if your office could find that and if it's not already, it might already be on the website, but I think it should go out. But just so everybody knows, the end user, Vic, I'm forgetting the name of where we take the recycling. What's his
Bayshore.
name? Yeah,
Bayshore.
Bayshore. They take all numbers of plastic. So that's why we did, although environmentally, 1, 3, 1, 2, and 5, is it, that are the ones that are really more recyclables. So it's not, it doesn't ruin our batch the way it did when we took it to the other place, that we get penalized or anything.
Mayor, this is something we're talking about, the Environmental Advisory Committee. Mr. Kittner was kind enough to set up a tour for some of the members, and they also noticed that all plastics are accepted. And so we're talking about whether we should be communicating that all your plastics can go in, or whether it makes more sense to just limit it to whatever it is, one, I forget also what numbers we accept. And like whether, so they're going to come up with a recommendation. We're going to continue the conversation to come up with a recommendation. And they also asked, since the recycling contract, I think, is up at the end of the year, if they can be part of the conversations when we're figuring out how to move forward. So I'm just passing that along.
Sure. Yeah, I'll probably have to instigate conversation again with, like we did with South Orange, because, and Bob McCoy was on that subcommittee where we came up with this anyway, so I'll include him again. He's helpful.
Perfect. And just a note on what Vic said, I said that too, because I wrote down on like my commingled week what plastics we can take. So even just putting in a parentheses, like 1, 3, I forget what they are, but I look at every time I'm going to do my recycling, I check to see what number. So I agree with that note.
I was thinking
Also-
if they were gonna do something like, 1, 2, 5, but I was
I don't even
afraid
know.
we'd end up with giving each other the finger or something, so.
Not to dive too deep in it, but if anybody puts the app Recycle Coach on your phone, and then you put in your town, it reminds you every Sunday night what goes up the next day.
Oh, that's
Wow.
a good tip.
Yeah.
The app is called Recycle Coach.
Yep.
Why did
Yeah,
we think about this before? This is great.
Oh, we have, I guess it just got lost in all of the,
The stuff.
yeah, the separation. We were so focused on the every other week and getting the residents to, change from throwing everything out there every week to the dual stream. So yeah, Recycle Coach, I have it on mine, it works and it reminds you. So a lot of people use it. We can put that on in the information too, that we put out through comms. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I have that information on what you can recycle, like taped to the cabinet where we keep our recycling.
But let's remember, reuse is better than recycle.
Right.
Okay. So we have some members of the public here. I didn't know if you wanted to say stuff or you are just here for something that's, the portion that's on the agenda around biking. Any Rob, Martin, Julia? Okay, Julia's here to listen. Okay, so we're gonna just, what we'll do, Paul, since we have them and they're here to, they want to hear about the biking stuff, we'll start with the traffic calming roads as opposed to the sanitary and the storm sewers. So first is the Parker Avenue bike lanes. So we have agreed to move ahead with the bike lanes, or at least, doing more feasibility with the bike lanes. We're planning to have meetings. So this is the way it will be worked out, is that we'll first meet with the institutions, and the 3 institutions that are most apparent are the high school, the Ethical Culture Society, and the Maplewood Jewish Center. We want to meet with them first, explain what we're doing, get any feedback from them. And then we'll meet with residents, and we'll do that in sections. Probably the first section will be from Maplewood Avenue down to, or maybe even up to Academy, and then from Academy on, and then maybe to Orchard, and then from Orchard on to Parker. We are Paul, I'm going to ask you and Dave to talk about sort of the structural aspects of this. What budget implications there are. What is the, where are we now? What are we going to be doing with this?
Sure. So the first part, you may have noticed the always stop that was put in at Parker and Burr in Suffolk. So, that was part of the plan, and I think it's been well received by the public. We do have a plan for Parker, and we did receive a number of comments from the public. Some of them are actually on this call. And I think the idea is to modify the plans, make some tweaks to it, and also, like you said, meet with members of the public and flesh out any additional thoughts, comments. There is an issue with eliminating trading parking for bike lanes in most instances along this stretch. So there's going to be some vetting there. In terms of budget, we did put in money for this year's budget. It's a fairly expensive project with all the striping that is required for that corridor. It's a long stretch of roadway, and we did build that in. There's also rapid flashing beacons that are required. So I don't know if you recall, but quite a few years back, probably 6 years ago, 5 to 6 years ago, we had the Safe Routes to Schools project, which we successfully implemented. And at the time, we put in what was, state of the art, the flash push button flashing beacons for pedestrians. But DOT no longer recognizes that as a proper notification. So they do approve the rapid flashing beacons, and all of those would have to be replaced. So, it's a fairly expensive endeavor, but I did build that money into the budget, and you could review that budget submission.
When we went over the budget last meeting, I think your number was $600,000.
It's around 600,000, yes. Mhm.
So now, Paul and Dave, you talked about striping. Are we also talking about bollards, or is that something that's going to be considered?
I think that's what has to get vetted is, do we put in physical barriers and bollards? I know that's requested by a number of people in the subcommittee, and I'm sure bicyclists like it at intersections. There's also the question, do we colorize the bike lane green? Do we do only portions of the bike lane? Do we just do the intersection? So that level of detail still needs to be vetted out, and that could affect the price as well. So, these are all considerations I think that are gonna, culminate and form in probably in the near future.
Patrick, can you go through the budget process and timing on that? This will be a capital cost.
So we will present capital items at the third 3 of 3 budget workshop. So that one is in late February, and we'll present it in late February. I'll give my recommendations to the township committee, and then we would have to adopt we'll adopt the budget that includes the 6-year capital plan. We will introduce an ordinance for the capital items that the township committee approves. That then goes to second reading. There's then a 20-day estoppel period after advertisement. So it's a long process. So likely that money becomes available in June to us. So again, we'll start discussing it in February. A lot of approvals, and if everything gets approved, those monies become available in June.
Okay. It's probably going to take that long to get community buy-in, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Nancy?
And then, that while that's a lengthy process, then we talk about putting together stance plans,
Right.
bidding for, it'll probably be out there for 30 to 60 days, contract award. So these are, this will take quite a while. I mean, I would expect a fall implementation at the earliest.
Paul, did you want to talk at all about what the thing you and I went to about yesterday at Turtleback?
So at Turtleback Zoo, Essex County presented a possible grant, a substantial grant project that is being launched, and there's a fair amount of money available for townships in Essex County. The initial application was being made through East Orange, but Essex County Engineering has basically indicated that we could piggyback on this and submit our applications and be part of that process to get projects covered. So, yesterday we did attend this, and Mayor, I'm glad you reminded me of this, because this is an opportunity for us to get some of this funded. If not Parker, it could be other projects as well that we're planning to help supplement that cost. So we're going to actively participate. There's a number of meetings that are still required. Yesterday was one of, I think, 4 meetings that we're going to attend. But the idea is to go through this process, work with Essex County, and see what funding we could get. It's similar in some respects to a road safety audit, but the main difference is the money's there now. They're not looking for the money, they're not applying for it, it's there. So it should be a more streamlined process.
And Paul, just on the bike lanes, this is a municipal street, it is a corridor. Do we have to get any approval from the county or the state?
I don't believe we do require approval because it's a local road. So it's
Okay.
not a county road, it's not a state road.
Okay. Any other questions from the township committee? Okay, let's move
I
on
have
to
one
Rutgers and
question.
Burnett. Patrick?
Yeah, so the comments that were submitted by the public, I know that they're curious to understand how the township will take those in and possibly make revisions to the plan, and when they may see revised plans.
Well, we don't have a plan yet. We're still shaping the plan.
Well, the traffic engineer had proposed plans for Parker and Donnell. And so those were the plans that the public had submitted comments on. So I know that those have been submitted back to the engineer. I think what I'd ask is some of those are changes suggested that everybody would agree with, and hopefully we can incorporate those into the plan. And then I expect there'll be some things that should be discussion items with this committee. So maybe the engineer can come back and discuss, at least things that were suggested that are responsible and maybe warrant further discussion here.
We sent those comments out to Dynamic, and they provided comments, and if I haven't forwarded it to you already, I'll certainly send it to you. They have their thoughts and comments on these. Some of them are aesthetic issues, some of them are cost issues that I think we have to vet internally to see how we want to proceed. So, once we have clear direction in terms of how we want to proceed, then we could finalize the plans. Just keep in mind, right now, what we have is a conceptual layout, and, it's not a bidding document, so it's going to have to be further refined before it goes on the street.
Yeah, I also want to make sure that when we go out to the public that we're still talking about a conceptual plan. Not that we're giving them a final plan, because I think we want to get input from others. We know that the people who are paying most attention to this, some of them on the call here, have provided opinions, but we're going to get a lot of other opinions. And not only from just people on Parker, because I've heard from people on the cross streets as to concern about people on Parker and their people serving the people on Parker ending up parking on the side streets. So we've got to deal with all that, and I just want to make sure we go out there and say, this is a conception, it's a conceptual plan. We want to move forward. We want to hear your input before we finalize it.
Hey, Paul, that could be possibly, we have just part of the thing that Essex County is doing. There'll be a couple of stakeholder meetings, a couple of on a countywide basis. And we can do a lot of our own meetings and include some of our bike people here to work in conjunction with the county on that project. So that'll be a lot of opportunity for community input. The other thing they want us to do is push out a survey to all our residents to get data. So that's good for us because they'll help us gather data just for Maplewood. And
Okay,
surrounding.
I know Julia has her hand up. We have over 30 items to go through. We're not going to spend this much time on all of them. I know there are people here. So Julia, we're going to let you speak, but we're going to move forward. So go ahead, Julia.
I was just gonna add a clarifying point about the SS4A Safety Action Plan grant, which is the county meeting that they were referring to yesterday. The funding is there now for the county's action plan, but then if Maplewood wanted to do your own action plan, you would apply separately for a grant for that plan, and then the plan needs to be developed with recommendations, and then in the future use those recommendations from the plan to apply for future implementation grants from the SS4A grant program, and it's a federal grant, so the timelines for it can be a lot slower than state grants or internal funding. So I just wanted to make sure people are aware of that. And South Orange already was awarded that grant and is hoping to start our consultant engagement. I don't know, hopefully by the summer.
Yeah, to Julia's point,
And
sorry, Julia, the federal projects typically take longer. I mean, these Valley Street improvements that we're working on now, that started in 2017 through a road safety audit. So it took all these years to get a shovel in the ground.
Vic, can I just say one more thing? Just to going back to what Pat was saying, if we have a concept and our bike working group submitted notes on the concept. So if we're taking a concept to the public now, I'm just wondering if there were things that Pat said everyone would agree on probably. Is it worth looking at it and revising that concept a little bit as we go to the public? If we already know that there's things that we'd all be on board changing. I don't remember. I read
I haven't seen anything, so I don't know what we're even talking about. So I would ask Paul to take a look at this and then at the next meeting, show it to us. We're not having a community meeting in the next meeting, before the next meeting. We're going to start, as I said, with the institution. So that's going to be first, and that's going to take some time to do.
Okay, so Pat, why don't you re-forward the notes to Vic and Paul, and you can copy me, and then we can go from there and bring them up on the next meeting.
Will do.
Okay, Rutgers and Burnett, the traffic light analysis. Has there been any work done on that?
A warrant analysis, excuse me, was completed, but they found that the signal itself was not warranted. So they provided us a brief report on that. Has to do with the volume of traffic not meeting the warrants, and they give a pretty detailed explanation in the report, but it's not warranted at Rutgers and Burnett.
Okay. So, two things. One is, I don't know when this was done, but we haven't heard about it yet. This is the first time we're hearing that there was one, and that it, I don't disagree that it's probably not warranted. Second, we just need to have a elevator speech for people who ask us about this. So if you could just write that up, that it was studied on whenever, these are the findings, and this is why it isn't warranted.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, and we
Okay.
can we'll circulate the report, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of it too.
Okay. The Newark Way striping, we talked about this at the last meeting. We did the one by Artie. We're going to be doing some other enhancements of crosswalks and stuff.
Yeah, we actually have a package out right now, an RFP package for striping improvements. It also includes Maplewood Ave, Newark Way. That includes also the crosswalk and refreshing the center line striping, et cetera, the stop bars, crosswalks. So that's on the street right now. Mr. Berry, I think the due date for the RFP is the 17th, is that right?
So we're going to do this work now. We have funds to do it now.
We have funds now to do it, yes.
And what about the striping as it relates to bracketing the parking spots on Newark Way? We agreed to do that at the last meeting.
Mr. Berry, did we provide detail on that in the striping that we sent out?
I don't believe we did, but we can add that without
Yeah, I mean,
without
you're talking
causing
about
any problems.
Bookends.
bookend striping,
yeah.
no problem. We could add that.
Yeah. Not
Yeah, we
individual
can-
parking
Not
spaces, but
individual.
bookends.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Daffis.
Okay. Paul, Headley and Franklin Terrace, our Irvington friends, anything going on?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because I just saw John Wiggins yesterday in the meeting, and the mayor and I cornered him, and he's the township engineer for Irvington. So Irvington has not been responsive in terms of the traffic calming, and apparently they've hired a traffic consulting engineer who's reviewing the design. So he asked for us to just send an email and follow up, and he should get us an answer fairly promptly. So the same goes with the Tiffany drainage. We're looking for Irvington's sign off on that, and he said that he would get us something quickly on that.
Yeah, he thought it was already done for Tiffany, right?
Yeah, he thought that, yes.
Okay. The Greenway bike lanes. So we do have a concept which requires, changing Dunnell and all that. So where are we with that? Nowhere?
We haven't revised the plans beyond what was presented last. I think, we
Right.
have to meet internally and make some decisions on that.
Yeah, I think there's some policy decisions there because we're eliminating all the parking on Dunnell from Jefferson to Oakland.
Right.
And then we were changing to one way between Oakland and Oakview, I believe.
Yeah, and we couldn't figure out, we could only get the bike lane one way. We couldn't figure out how to get it the other way.
Right.
I think that's still in conversation
Well,
now.
that's up by the station. Yes, right,
And certainly Oakview to Baker would be one way as well. So
right. Okay, so you're gonna, so I think if you could ask John to reflect on what we talked about last time. I know the mayor had some concerns about making the portion one way between Oakland and Oakview and the circulation there.
I still do. Did they do a traffic analysis at all? Because, and taking into account all the additional housing going on in South Orange that still isn't, and the backup and the inability to widen Valley Street, so people are detouring off. So that would take that away from them to get off Valley.
I'm not aware of an analysis, Dave. Are you aware of any analysis? So we can certainly
Yeah, I
task
wouldn't
that.
be making it one way before we know what the results, or have an idea what the results are gonna be.
We'll
Unless
have
we
another
want to
conversation.
do it temporary, like we did over at, and it didn't work out over at Tuscan Street between, Boyden and Durant. No, what's the
Burnett.
street name?
Burnett.
Burnett thing. Yeah. So I think at the very least, we should test it out before we do it for real.
Okay, your point's well taken. We'll have another conversation with them and get some answers.
Okay. Valley and Baker. I know the county is still working on that. Is it still planned to realign that intersection? Or has that have been done already?
The curb work's been done and the signal placement has been done. So cars are essentially functioning right now with the curb alignment the way we anticipated it. But there's still, and they did pour sidewalks. There's obviously the need to put the new poles in there on back order. And there's some finishing work that still remains, but in terms of geometry, it's functioning the way it was laid out.
Can you also check with the Conservancy about the corners that they bumped out at the park? And the work to be done there, a little more coordination. Maybe Mike, you've probably been coordinating. I know you've been coordinating a little bit, but I just like those signs, that bulletin board signs have to be moved closer to the corner. and things like that that the county should be doing.
Yeah, one of them was damaged. We went out there, we picked it up, and we're in the process of rebuilding it. And once it's completed, we'll move the sign further out.
Yeah, and then the conservancy or the county can, plant, because they're gonna have a big empty space where landscaping should go. So,
Yeah, I've been talking with Deborah regularly about that.
Okay, Tuscan Street. We talked about the traffic calming there, a couple of options.
Sure. So last time we spoke about the parking on both sides to provide some more friction, to slow cars down. I think we also indicated previously that the former improvements had slowed traffic down based on the analysis that we performed. So we can implement this, in turn, I think, Ms. Engel, you had a question on bike lanes, did you not? And
Yeah, I do not support adding parking to the other side of the street if that street is earmarked for bike lane. We talk about how parking is the biggest hurdle, and so I don't know why we would add parking on a street that's like a linkage parts of our town.
sure.
I
So
think, Paul, you were talking about that was going to be the Sharrows in-street bike lanes.
there's
know.
two
Sorry, I don't-
options. I'm sorry.
I'm just frustrated. Like, I don't think we should be adding parking there. What are the other traffic calming options besides adding parking? There's so many other ways to calm traffic. And Sharrows, we talk about all the time how it doesn't work. Sharing the road doesn't work. And that's a very congested intersection already because it's the only way to cut through. And it's a part, I mean, when you look at the bike map, that's the way that you connect Maple Crest to DeHart. So I'm not really sure why we would be adding parking at a place where we're going to be wanting protected bike lanes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that I know that the pushback on it has been that why do we have bike lanes in a section where it doesn't connect with anything? The whole point is it will connect with something in the future. And so if we implement it now, yeah, it's a stretch that maybe doesn't connect, but it's a start of things.
So there's a lot of traffic calming options that we could look at, and if that's how the committee wants to move forward, then certainly we can look at other options. I mean, there's speed humps, for example, that can be used. And we talked about those last time. So, I think if the push is to maintain a dedicated bike lane, then that obviously would change the design. Right, because if the geometry is the geometry, we only have so much room to work with. We have a 30-foot wide road. So if we introduce parking on both sides and we still want two-way circulation and we're not willing to make it one way, and you want a dedicated bike lane, there's just not enough room. So I think internally, maybe, I don't know if you need to discuss this more internally, but if the direction is you want a dedicated bike lane, then there's other traffic calming options such as speed humps. That's something that we could look at.
Have we done any, I think the last time we talked about also looking at if any of the intersections qualify for a four-way stop. I don't know if we've done that work yet.
We've not been able to do the analysis for the four-way stop yet.
Okay, so let's do that also.
Okay.
So again, remember, there's parking on one side. Rob, I hesitate to open it up to the public. We gave a public comment period in the beginning. So this is for the township committee. I'm gonna let you speak in a minute, but just hold on a second. We have parking on one side, so if we're not having parking on both sides, which we don't have to do, we just remember that bike lanes have to have one way going one way and one way coming another way.
No, I know that. It's just that we talk about how it's always hard to take away parking. So we already don't have parking on one side. So then it's just, I really feel strongly about not adding parking if we're going to think about taking it away.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Rob?
Sorry, didn't realize I only comment at the beginning because I didn't know the whole agenda. But I would say, please don't add any more Sharrows around the town. As someone who bikes everywhere, it gives a false sense of security that the drivers are not aware of, and they just get mad that you're in front of them. And adding parking only narrows the road if the parking is used, and if the parking is used, that means also inducing more traffic, and that doesn't really help. I don't think anyone wants more traffic. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Prospect Street. So where are we with Prospect? I know we're planning to do that in 2026. What are we doing in 2025?
So Prospect Street itself, we have a municipal aid grant, as you indicated, that we'd be paving in 26. I think what we need to do is come up with a comprehensive plan for this that includes bump outs, considers curb bump outs, considers the bike lanes, the dedicated lanes. And that all has to be made part of a plan, and that's something that we can lay out. I know Dynamic had produced some temporary plans for Elmwood and Oakland Road. You know, we have cones out there now. Obviously, we don't want to keep them long-term. You know, the short term is we could put up the mountable bollards, right? We could put them out in replace of the curbs, and that would give it a nice, consistent look. You know, but I think the problem is if you're using, for example, quick curb and these bollards, it gets costly and it starts adding up the price. So at that point, you might as well just put the curb in. You know, and to put the curb in, I think that just requires something as permanent as that or long term. It really requires a solidified plan. So my suggestion is we should proceed early with getting this plan together. Start designing the traffic aspect of it. You know, the construction side can follow as part of the grant, but at least get the layout done for this work. So, you know, if we're implementing curbs, for example, and bump outs, hardscape measures, we call them, then that would actually reduce the area in the road that we're considering milling and resurfacing, right? So that's a hardscape improvement. But that's something that we can consider doing. You know, we did include money in the budget for this. So assuming that we get approved that money, we have sufficient funds to do these bump outs.
Now, we've talked before about how bump outs and bike lanes to me sound like a contradiction. I'm
Yeah.
for doing a plan and not moving forward with anything. I like your idea about getting a plan started. I'm curious about how long that kind of process takes. And then I was just curious about the cones get like knocked around. There were some shattered yesterday. I was just wondering, like, I know that that's the best, cheapest solution right now, but I'm just curious about like the length of time the cones are going to be there, and could we do something else, or what is the cost difference if we did something else? So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's.
Are you talking just at Oakland and Prospect?
Yeah, because Paul
And
referenced
Oakview, where we also have the cones at Oakview, those two intersections?
have the cones. I'm talking about from like yeah, Elmwood, Oakland to past to Elmwood, I guess, right? Where are those cones on that stretch?
I think it's I think they're just on the corner of Oakland and the corner of Oakview. I don't think they're at
Move
Elmwood.
around
I
because
They're Elmwood and
All right,
Oakland.
so
Regardless. Paul, can you do bump outs with striping and be as effective so they don't interfere with the bike lane? I don't know.
So a couple things. The bump outs themselves, we could look at hardscape improvements, and I think that's what Dynamic indicated on there when they were on the call, the prior meeting. They would factor in dedicated bike lanes with the bump outs, and that's part of the design.
Would they be mountable bump outs?
Well,
Because it's not quite a street.
We'll have to look. The devil's in the details, and we'll have to look when we actually design this and lay this out. I think if you're looking for something short term, as I indicated, Ms. Engel, you know, we could put in, for example, the bollards and mount them more permanently than the cones. The fact that cars are hitting the cones is part of the reason we're putting cones out to begin with. We want to make sure that there's proper, you know, area for cars to circulate. It could be just something as simple as it was too close to the intersection, the cone, and that's why the car clipped it. You know, but that's why we put the cones out. It's kind of like the experimental phase, right? It gives us a lot of information on that. But the short-term measure is we could do the bollards, right? And spend the money for that. And I could get some costs together for that, all right? And get a cost estimate and what this is gonna cost. We could get some quotes. And see what that's gonna cost. Are we just doing these two intersections, Elmwood and Oakland?
I think for now, we have the cones, yeah. I think we should move ahead with the bollards, the quick curb bollards like we have on Burnett. They're more permanent. Look, we're not gonna get to this road at best till mid to late 2026. There's a lot, you know, we have not even had any conversation with anybody along Prospect about bike lanes and no parking. And you know, there's only so much weight we can carry here. We have to do this Parker first. And so um, the cones are not. We don't want the cones up there for another year and a half. So let's do the. I think those are two intersections that have been pointed out. We put the cones there. It's actually helped slow the traffic mid-block.
So we'll come up with a quick layout for that. We'll get pricing. We'll notify the homes that are directly affected by this. We'll present them with our concept. And we'll get pricing and we'll move forward with the installation, assuming we have sufficient budget now, right? So that'll be our position and how we proceed forward.
And you have you're coming to us in the capital budget 1.7 million for Prospect.
Yes,
And what do we get? Under 500,000 from the state, right?
it's just short of 500,000.
Right.
Yes.
So
And-
it's over. We have to put up over $1 million to complete this project. And
yes,
that's a whole nother question of whether it even fits in with everything else.
we could do a scope modification. We've done this in the past with Midland and Springfield Ave. You know, we could shorten the length of the grant, and we can reapply another year. It's called the scope modification, and it's common. We could do it, no problem.
If in your initial plans you were milling and paving curb to curb,
Yes.
okay. So right now we're going to continue to pursue 2025 will be planning, and we'll have meetings about this, but they won't be for a while. And then we'll see what happens in the budget process, and then you'll do some pricing and move forward on the quick curbs and the bollards.
I like the idea of the quick curb and the bollards, as long as the price isn't too excessive. I like the idea of it because it's a more permanent solution than the cones. It'll also reinforce, you know, the traffic pattern. And guess what? If it doesn't work or we have to tweak something, we can move them. They can be
Right.
moved.
They seem to be working pretty well over on Burnett.
Yes.
Okay. Another easy one, the bikeway network. Patrick, where are we with that?
I mean, at this point, we're going project by project. We haven't discussed further a larger network through town. I mean, we have the concept, but our direction, I think at the last meeting was let's try to take the next easiest places to implement bike lanes and progress there. I think there was at least I had a concern that if we roll the full bike network out to the town and say this is what we're going to do and it's going to affect your street, there would be pushback that wouldn't make some of these initial implementations possible. So my recommendation is let's get Parker done, let's get Donnell done. You know, we can start talking about Prospect, and then once we have those initial corridors set up, we start to roll out a wider network. We have a map, and I think that's been circulated, but I don't recommend moving that forward until we get some of these corridors set up.
I totally agree with Pat because I think once we start, and those corridors, just looking at Parker and Donnell, you all of a sudden open up a big network. And I think once we start making it safer and easier to bike around and more people are biking, I think it'll be a better sell to the community. And I agree, I have the same thinking, Parker, Donnell, Prospect, and Tuscan Street maybe.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Paul, the safe routes to the school, you talked about this at the last meeting. Just tell us where we are with all this and what's the big plan?
So the big plan is that preliminary design will proceed. The state reimburses the full amount of the preliminary design. There was an error when it was originally reported to the state, and the state sent it to us. And we've amended the amount, and the state has, accepted the increase. There was a slight difference in the cost. So, I've signed off on it, and we're proceeding forward with that preliminary design. Right now, it's a matter of, and actually, let me strike that. Roseanne got a resolution that she's putting on for approval to get GPI, the design engineer, moving on the preliminary design. There was a slight increase in the cost, but the state is reimbursing that. So it's proceeding forward.
And you think this money is going to be available year after year?
There are applications that we could submit for safe routes to schools. The problem is they're very competitive. And we've been very fortunate in this is our second one that we've been able to secure. There's towns that apply for years and don't get any. So the fact that we've been able to get a second one is fantastic. But yes, we can reapply for these. It is federal monies, and there's a lot of steps and hurdles that we have to go through. It's not like a municipal aid grant, for example. It's a lot more work and cost.
Okay.
But the good news is the state reimburses. The problem is it's a timeline thing. It takes a long time to implement.
Okay.
Paul, you were going to send me the list of intersections that were going to be part of this.
I'm sorry, Ms. Engel. I will send that to you. I have that easily.
Send
in
it to
format
everyone
that
on
I
the
can send
township
it to you.
committee, just so we know.
Yep.
Paul.
Will do. Sorry about that.
Okay, we asked you to do a 4-ton truck prohibition, Fields and Porter. You were going to do an analysis of it.
So we had Dynamic do that, and they actually provided guidance, and I think we presented that a couple meetings ago. The problem is it's a substantial amount of work, and I just want to make sure that the township wants to proceed forward with this. It actually would cost some money as well. There's a resolution from both towns, Union as well as Maplewood, and there's other work and studies that have to be done. So, is it something that the town wants to proceed forward with? If the answer is yes, we're happy to move it forward.
Yeah, I think the commercial industrial area is going to stay, and we are getting larger trucks that are coming there to the plumbing supply, to the casket place, and they're using the residential streets there as ways to, turn or they get lost, and they hit things.
Yep.
So I think we agreed that we wanted to, if this was warranted, and that's what we asked Dynamic to tell us, that we understood there were hurdles with Union and everything, but I think we want to move forward.
Yeah, no, the answer is we could actually add the restriction, and we can move forward with the study. I'm just letting the town know that there's a lot of steps to this, and it's going to still take some time and cost. So,
And we still can't just restrict it on our own. We have to have all this backup for weight and all that stuff. We can't just say
yes,
no.
it's very strict, the requirements from DOT.
Well, you can't enforce it. You can put a sign up, but you can't enforce it.
Right. And you're limiting interstate commerce, right? And that's why there's such restrictions and data required from DOT. So Paul, can you walk us through, and I agree we should move forward with this. We've heard from our residents emphatically about this more than once. So what are the next steps? What does this look like?
So the next steps would be for Dynamic to complete whatever administrative paperwork they need to in reporting, data collection. They did some of that collection now. It's coordinating with Union. It's having both townships pass resolutions for the restriction itself. you know, there's a fair amount of work, and then applying to DOT for the restrictions. So, you know, it's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time, sure. What about the additional cost? You mentioned there might be additional cost associated with the next steps. Can you opine further?
Yeah, there's an application fee that gets presented to DOT for this type of review, and I don't know for sure what the amount is, but I thought it was pretty substantial. Dave, do you know offhand what that amount is? Do you recall if they indicated that in the report?
My understanding is that that application fee is north of $10,000.
And is that included in your budget? Probably not, because you didn't know if we wanted to go forward with it until today.
Yeah, Ms. Daffis, we would just incorporate that as part of the traffic calming budget that we request annually, and that's something we would cover. We didn't specifically call it out as a budget line item.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking to see how much you wanted for traffic calming. It was a pretty substantial, $300,000. That's what you asked for. Okay.
I think we could absorb that.
Yeah, I think we could fit 10,000 in that. Okay. The street tree planting. I know that you talked last meeting about wanting to focus some more financial resources on street trees, that we've kind of exhausted the planting in the parks.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Well, for this year, we were stuck with the budget that we had that was allocated for both street trees and park trees. We were successful in planting the 70 street trees. We did bias sections 1, 2, and 3. We did plant also in 4, 5, and 6, but we biased the plantings in 1, 2, and 3. It was more heavily planted there. And we did plant 150 park trees. So Mike, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that. I know you put a lot of time into this, working with Mr. Monahan, the contractor.
Yeah, no, you hit the numbers correctly. And like you said, we planted through, sections 1 through 6, and we did focus more in, 1, 2, and 3. And hopefully next year we can continue on and, keep planting more street trees and rebuilding the canopy in these sections of town that were, devastated by storms throughout the years, and hopefully lower the heat index in those areas.
Mr. Ham, what would you recommend on an annual basis in terms of street trees? How many street trees we should be planting each year? You have a number?
I mean, I'd like to stick between somewhere in 70 and 100.
I think you told us that you were going to ask for some more money, and you were asking open space for 25,000 for park trees and more money out of the capital for street trees.
Our former request last year, I think, was 75,000, and I think we're pretty good with park trees. We still want an amount for park trees under open space, but I think there's more of a need for the street trees to get
There are, but can you include Hart Park on the park trees? Because I think that there's been some loss of big trees there. And then I know you don't want to, I mean, we talked about big trees around a playground, but they don't get big for a few decades. So, but
we did do quite a bit of tree planting in Hart.
Oh, okay.
And we hit the pool as well.
Right, I saw them
Right.
there. Okay, Paul, I left off Springfield Avenue. Where are we with that?
So I just got paperwork through PMRS. We're going to submit the voucher for reimbursement. We did award the project to DLS, so we're allowed under the rules and laws to submit a voucher for 75% of the total cost under the grant that for reimbursement. So we're going to move forward with that. And it's a matter of scheduling a pre-construction meeting and then working on a schedule for Springfield Avenue.
Did the Township Committee approve this contract?
I believe DLS was approved. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, can I just go back for a second? Mike, are we able to can we use open space money for those pool trees that I asked you to?
Yes.
That's what I was hoping. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Okay. Yeah, and
So
just
when do you think the construction is going to start?
I think it could start spring, summer is probably when we could do this.
I would just ask that you have Nicole Wallace attend the pre-construction meetings.
Yeah, we're gonna.
She's
invite a lot
aware of what's
people.
going on.
Agreed.
Okay, let's go back to sanitary and storm sewers. Maple Terrace.
Maple Terrace, we received our approval through DEP. And there's still some work that has to be done in terms of mitigation and easements. I know some of the conditions of their approval. I was talking with Fred Scherer of NV5. You know, he had some questions and concerns. He's trying to set up a meeting with DEP to discuss some of the conditions, but you know, we still have to work out the mitigation portion of it, and we have to secure the easements. So those are the two big things that are remaining for the project.
When you say mitigation, does that mean we have to get other land to replace what we're doing there?
Well, that's normally one option is you could either pay into a bank, right, a fee for the impacts, or you can, if you have ownership of a parcel that's suitable, you could also, you know, basically install wetlands or in that location and deed restrict it. So the problem is, one of the problems we have is that, you know, according to DEP and my understanding of it, there's not a proper bank to pay into. And that's what we're trying to work out with them right now.
Okay.
Those types of details.
You have a ballpark as to when we're gonna go out in the street to solicit bids for this?
I think we're looking at best case scenario, late summer, fall, and worst case scenario, spring of next year.
To solicit bids or start work?
I'm sorry, to start work. So we could solicit bids earlier than that over the summer.
Okay. So summer bids and then late fall 25, early spring 26
Yes.
to start work. And what do you think, 6 months?
You know, it's probably going to be less than that. You know, in former conversations I've had with Fred, we're probably looking at 4-month construction window.
Okay.
Vic, when you sent out notice of our being awarded the permit, being approved for the permit rather, you included that permit itself, right? Like, I'm just trying to I'd like to review the conditions. Like, we were apparently approved, but conditioned on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to review that.
I think I did. If not, we can send you what they sent. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did.
I think you did too. I just don't remember. Yeah,
Okay. If you need anything, let me know.
of course. Thank you.
Okay. The Rawway River, where are we with the dam removal?
So speaking with Fred Scherer, they looked further into not only the dam removal, but also dredging. And they located a plan from the county. The concern they have is that the footings of the bridge are higher than they anticipated, and they don't want to undermine the footings. So it's a matter of having a meeting with the county before we move forward with the project. And he's currently trying to schedule this meeting. He told me he's trying to get something together in the next 2 weeks with the county. He's been talking to them. So as soon as he meets with them, I'd like to attend that meeting as well. As soon as he meets with them, we'll have a better understanding of the work.
Okay. And Patrick, we received only one, I believe we only received one survey from the residents along Donnell, right? After our meeting with them, we asked them to send us surveys and stuff.
Yes.
There wasn't a lot of interest from the residents.
No,
Is that correct?
I think that's even an overstatement. I don't think there was,
right.
maybe there was interest from one resident.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism, because I understand the implication from our meeting was that there would be financial responsibility from those residents for the
Right.
repair, that the township could coordinate and provide maybe an overall effort to get this done, but that there would be costs borne by the residents. And I think at that point they waited out and there wasn't interest.
Was
And
it,
I think, we haven't had a lot of rain, so they haven't had an impact this year.
was it, sent to the property owners too? There's a lot of rentals there.
Just the property owners. We just sent it to the property owners. They were the ones invited to the meeting. Well, anyone could come, but it was directed mostly to the property owners. Okay. Lower Boyden Avenue, Paul?
So, we had produced a map that was sent to us from Mont McDonald indicating the sections and areas that they recommended we perform smoke testing on. And a request was made for the report. I think we circulated that report. I looked briefly through it, and Dave, I know you've combed through it. But there's a lot of detail in it, and it does substantiate the shaded areas in the report and the recommendation for the smoke testing. But I would recommend that we have a meeting with Mott McDonald and John Ruskey and set that up, because I think not only do I have some questions in the report that I want to ask him, but I think there's a lot of detail that we should really figure out before we move forward with smoke testing. So I think, Vic, if you're available and anyone else who's interested, we should probably have that meeting with them.
I think, Patrick, you had some questions about it too.
Yeah.
So basically what this is we have a main sanitary sewer that goes down through Boyden Avenue that captures a lot of the east side of town. And it appears that we have a lot of stormwater infiltration in the sanitary sewer. Remember, the sanitary sewer is a closed system, and it's only supposed to be dealing with the waste and the water from our house. The storm source captures all the storm water. And you don't want storm water in the sanitary sewers because it's not built for that. And that's where we have backups in people's houses. We have manholes that explode with all sewage and all that. So we believe that there are people who have sub pumps tied into their sanitary sewers. They may have other things that are directly going into their sanitary sewers, and they're what's called surcharging. They're adding water and pressure to the sanitary sewer. So one way of finding out if there are these, let's say,
Illicit connection.
I don't want to say that, inappropriate connections, is that because many of these people buy homes with these things already there, so it's not their fault. These things were there already, but they're just inappropriate. And so you do a smoke test so that you see where you shoot smoke down the sanitary line so you see where it goes and comes out. And so that's what we're talking about doing. The concern is, again, this is mostly of the east side of town. So if we do something like this, we want to do it in a way that's sensitive to folks who live on the east side, who don't feel that we're targeting them, and we're potentially forcing them to make major repairs to their homes. So that's there's the sort of the engineering side, and then there's the community side of how to balance that. So that's what we've been talking about. Did I capture that right, Patrick?
Yes.
So we have to meet with the engineers and figure this out.
Paul, when you set up that call, can you make sure you recirculate the report? I don't think I've read through it since they made updates, right? I think my initial comments were that there wasn't enough information, and I haven't read through anything since I provided those comments. So if the report's been updated, you don't need to circulate it now, but just when you send out the meeting invite.
Happy to do that.
Okay, Paul, Meadowbrook.
So Meadowbrook, obviously, last year we did our walkthrough. We also spoke to the association about easements and their willingness to grant those easements for the drainage improvements there. And they are on board in agreement with providing the easements. They indicated that to me in an email. So there's permits that have to be acquired. I think Fred Scher, I spoke to him about this. He needs to acquire those permits, and in order to do that, he needs to finalize the plans. So he's working right now on finalizing the plans, it's gonna take 1 to 2 months, knowing Mr. Scher, it's probably 2 months. And we'll present that to the association, and then we will make a submission to DEP. And again, we've been through this process before, so in terms of permitting, it could be a lengthy process. If all goes well, my feeling is, unless there's something spectacular that occurs, we're probably looking at a spring construction,
Spring of what year?
26. And that's a valid question.
And we're looking at this as something that would be coming out of the stormwater utility, right?
I think this would be a great project for the stormwater utility, yes.
Okay. Well, here's another one, Kendall Avenue.
So, Kendall Avenue, we're actually putting in some paperwork right now, the initial paperwork for the Mikey Sherrill grant. I did speak with the contact who handles these grants at the federal level, and they submitted this paperwork to us. So we're filling this out. Simultaneously, we're also working on the sinkhole at St. Lawrence. We tried to bid out a package. We didn't get any bids. So Fred Scher is finalizing reworking plans so that we can get the sinkhole fixed. That's our first priority. And then the entire line that feeds Kendall along St. Lawrence is in need of lining. It's in bad shape, that sewer line, really bad shape. And the problem is, it's not in the street. It goes through people's backyards and along our park. So, and it's an issue of easements and access. So we're trying to do this in the pipe itself, the repair, so that we don't have to excavate people's backyards. And that's what we're working on. We actually built in monies in the budget for this work. The Mikey Sherrill money, that's the $965,000. We envision that would pay for the main upgrade that's along Kendall. And, the stormwater utility combined with, other requests for funding, we could get the line along St. Lawrence repaired. There was also a concept that was discussed. It hasn't been engineered yet, but part of this overall drainage package, we were thinking of a underground detention in the Orchard Park section, that elevated section next to St. Lawrence. And using that space, which is currently open, and it can still be used as a park when we're done. But we basically have large diameter pipes underneath that can be used for storage and for the peak flow rates. And that's what we're looking into. It's a big job. It's going to need a lot of attention and engineering. But I think it'll be a good project when we're done.
And we're talking about 2025 on the line repairs?
Well, certainly the sinkhole is going to be this spring. That's what we're looking at, and I have money for that. We're looking at the lining itself would also be 25 of St. Lawrence, the 36 to 42 inch storm sewer main that is what I just discussed. That's 25 as well. But in terms of the Mikey Sherrill grant monies and the upgrade of the main, that's at the earliest would be 26. There's a lot of permitting that's required for that.
Right. Okay. And Tiffany Place, you mentioned that before. You're just waiting for Irvington to coordinate?
We have plans, and there's actually, Dave, one property we have to secure rights of entry into to do the work. So we'll work on that with Fred. But we have the plans ready. As soon as we get the approval, we can move forward with that.
Okay.
I think we did put in money for Tiffany for this year's budget.
Right.
And we are going to need that money. So when I say move forward, that's assuming that we get the money for through the budget.
Well, I think you were talking about putting that into the stormwater utility also.
We could absolutely do that, and that would also be another good project for that.
Okay. All right. Now we're on to something simple. The Woodland. Doors and more.
So forgive me, I'm trying to, oh, here it is. So Conley Hickey is preparing a plan for one door. We're gonna actually construct it, go out and get this work done. I know, Dave, you've been working with Margaret on trying to get that plan for that one door, right? Do you have any update on that?
The current timing is construction's lined up for March.
March, okay. So the idea is we get the one door done, we get a better understanding of what's gonna be required, and then we could apply what we feel is that what we learned there to the other doors, and it also help our cost estimate, right?
So you're
So-
gonna apply for grant, because we have the historic plan, you can now apply for grants from SHPO, right? Is it
Yes.
SHPO?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But there's also another issue besides the door, and that there's a structural issue with the building. So looking through the report, there's a pretty sizable amount of money that she's estimating for the structural repairs. And we did put that in this year's budget. It's one of these things you have to front it and then you seek reimbursement. A portion of that money may or may not be reimbursed through the SHPO grant program. But, you know, we have to ensure that we have sufficient funds to get it done. So based on her report and her estimates, Dave and I put that in the budget. And, you know,
Yeah,
as
you
soon as
put
we get that money,
1.5 in the budget. 1.5 in the budget.
it's a lot of money.
So
Structural is where in the building?
The roof.
the roof, yeah.
And then, that would be reimbursable though with the grant, right? Do we know the result of the
Portion,
grant?
a portion.
Right,
A portion of it would be, yeah,
right, but do we know before we do the project that whether or not we can get the grant? In other words, or is it after? Because you said if
No,
we get.
before. You have to do, you have to get approval. In order to get the funding, you have to get
Yeah.
approval before.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was confused by what Paul said. Okay.
well, no.
But we need to do the work and then get reimbursed. So you gotta
Yeah,
put the money
exactly.
up.
It's a reimbursement grant, and that's how most grants work. So you have to do the work, you have to front the money, and then the state or agency reimburses you.
Dean, did you have a question?
I do. I have a couple questions. So, the structural roof stuff, that was like phase one's got to be done sooner rather than later, right? Because there was a lot of work that needs to be done, but this was like the work needs to be phased in, and the roof repair was recommended as the first thing to do. Is that right?
It's
Yeah.
certainly a high priority, and I, you know, I could talk to Margaret in terms of timing, but I think anytime you're talking about a structural repair, it's something that you should prioritize.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I want to, so it was the highest importance repair that was noted in the report, but I want to be clear that the report stated specifically that there was no current concern of
Right.
structural integrity collapse. So that's clear. It's the highest thing on the list, but it's not there because it has to be done today, where it'll be our first application. But I just don't want anybody to think that there's concern over use of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Wary.
Right.
good point.
Thank you for making that clear.
Yeah.
No, that's important. That's important. So are we saying that we're adding the one door to this, or are we doing the door separately? I mean, we've been talking about the woodland doors for like 2 years.
I don't, I think we're doing the door on an expedited basis to see what's involved. And I don't know offhand if it would be subject to reimbursement as well. Dave, do you have any insight in that?
The door is going to be entirely separate from the structural work. It will be available to some level of compensation, but not as generous as if we pre-apply.
Okay. And so now based on, you know, we've been talking about the doors for a really long time, and after we got a compromise or some more recommendations from Hickey, what is the cost of one door now?
10,000.
we're looking at, in terms of rebuilding it, we're probably looking at, in terms of the door and the framing around it, we're looking at $30,000 to $40,000 a door.
That went up. So you're saying that the fixing the one door is gonna inform what we do with the rest of the doors and what the timeline is for
It's
that?
gonna give us an idea and some guidance, yeah.
It's gonna inform the design and whether we're using any prefab type stuff or, and doing the sunlights on the sides. What about the siding? Did
I
everybody
think
hear
this-
me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The side, the
That
siding.
work is recommended also.
Yeah.
But that's
It's
isn't that a separate agreement with Hickey?
They
We
have a
did what-
separate award and we have separate money for that, but I think Margaret from Connolly Hickey recommends that take a look at one door first to understand, because it's kind of all tied together.
Yeah.
So let's do one door first and then it'll both inform the rest of the doors and also what we do with the openings
Yeah.
above the doors and the siding there.
Yeah, the windows.
But the one door is gonna cost us as much as $40,000.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're comfortable with this? That's a lot of money, folks.
Yeah, well, or we could talk about it for another 5.
And we had looked at, because we weren't comfortable with this, we had looked at an opportunity to use a fully prefab door, and we were preparing for an application to HPC to do that. But Paul's review of what that would cost, since, while maybe it doesn't have all of the built characteristics of a historic door, it would have the same look, but just because of the dimensions, the look, the side lights, what we thought was going to be a less expensive door is turning out to be about the same cost. And Paul, maybe you can explain why that is. I think everybody's frustrated that is the case, yourself included.
I'm astounded that, of the costs, and I think the problem is we won't get the proper approval without putting in-kind door, a wood door with a wood core. And when you look at carpenters and people who do this level of work, it's expensive, and that's just it. If you have to use in-kind, I don't, me personally, I know I talked to Margaret about a prefab door or something that had a wood veneer. But the problem is they're saying the wood veneer doesn't qualify because it's not in kind. It doesn't have a wood core to it, which kind of blows my mind. But I'm frustrated, and I think a lot of time has passed. And I just feel as if this is the only way we're going to go forward and get approval, then maybe we have to acquiesce and move this way. The only saving grace is that a lot of this would be subject to reimbursement through the grant.
Yeah,
that
that's
lessens the pain.
what it said. It's frustrating, but if it's about the same cost, we'll get approval for one and we'll get half the money at least.
Well,
Hopefully.
yeah, but the grant's not going to cover 100%. I think
No,
at most it
half.
covers 50%.
50%.
Yeah, that's
So
what I said.
our plan was to go to the state and ask for the doors, and then the roof issue came up. So I think in our first application, we'll probably continue to ask for roof and doors and see what we can get. And it's a 50% payment from the state.
Which is a lot. So, and we wouldn't be able to get it without the plan, which is why we went that way, right? So,
And we're not going to get SHPO to approve the doors unless we do it this way.
right.
And
Right.
also HPC.
And to Pat's point, it's not that significant a cost difference anymore.
Well, it
As
isn't
expected.
only because we're adding the other stuff, like the side panels and all the other stuff that we want to add to make it historically appropriate. And to therefore to ensure approval from the state. But originally, we were just talking about replacing the doors because we don't have any doors in that facility. I mean, we have doors, you know what I mean? So I don't know, folks. I really feel like something happened here, something slick, in my opinion, in that, once historic realize that we can go out for a plan, that all of this stuff was added into the plan. And of course, the state is going to recommend veneer and whatever they need to recommend, but our taxpayers are fronting that. And that's a lot of money for one door. And we have how many doors?
How many doors? Yeah, how many doors?
10, how many? 12, 10?
12 doors, 12 doors are on the auditorium alone.
Yeah.
That building as a whole contains something in the order of 16 or 18 doors.
Yeah, but not like the ones on the auditorium part with the
Correct.
With the half
correct.
moon, yeah.
And
there's-
I think we were talking about the prefab door and restoring the lights on the sides and rebuilding up where it was water damaged on a lot of the doors. I don't think we ever talked about not repairing and replacing those side lights ever. So it's always been a big cost, and I would disagree with you that there's some sort of something going on. I just do. And I think without the plan, we don't get 50% of the cost back. This was the only way to go through it, to be able to apply for the grants and get 50% of the funding back. So the doors were already expensive. That's why we've been talking about them for 5 years and try to figure out how to do them and to get the permissions we need to on the exterior of a historic building.
Well, that all may be true, and I'm certainly I want to be careful with my language. I'm not alleging anything nefarious, so I'll retract the slick comment. But I do think the public needs to understand this in a way that they don't understand it right now. Because if the public knows that this is what we're doing, I think we're going to have some legitimate and reasonable pushback.
Well,
Everyone look. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I'm just
Okay,
gonna,
okay.
if it's 40,000 more and we get 50% back, that's what the public needs to understand.
Yeah,
Listen,
if we
it's,
get
it's a lot
50%.
of money, and even at 50%, it's a
A
lot
lot
of
of,
money.
even $20,000 a door is a lot of money
Right. But
per door.
listen, we designate it as a historic building, and this is some of what the problem of people who have historic houses. That's why they don't want us to designate them, because it's very costly to repair and replace. And, you know, we've got to, this has got to be approved by both HPC and SHPO, the state. So,
I think the benefit of our process now.
Paul, we're gonna move. We're gonna move on. Thank you. Let's go to D Hart Park. That should be easier.
So the good news is VHB is the consulting engineer who's gonna perform the design. We're working on coordinating a meeting with Ms. Mancuso, obviously Mr. Weary, anyone else who's interested in attending. But this is a kickoff meeting to go through. There you go. Malia will include you as well, Ms. Herman. So, you know, but we want to get as many people involved in this up front in the beginning to understand what the, you know, where are the concerns? We understand the concerns, their drainage concerns, their playable concerns. And, you know, we want to get the best possible design from VHB. The way we look at this is we're NASA and we're putting a person on the moon. We get one shot at this, right? So that's how we're approaching this, and that's how I expressed it to VHB. There's no room for error, for failure. So the only point I want to point out is engineering is one component of it. Obviously, management and you know, the field and how often we use it, that's a whole nother component. We can provide the best grass field possible. The problem is if you overuse it, it can substantially affect its performance. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are going to have to happen, and we're probably going to have to adjust some of our, you know, our current uses.
Well,
Well, not,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just
No,
gonna
go ahead.
talk about Virginia Lamb's information about maintaining it. And I think we haven't been maintaining it anywhere near that with the you know, whatever we put on it to keep the soil and moving the soil and using water. There's a lot of information. And I think we need to make sure that we're trained to maintain it properly so it's a healthy field. Then that will extend the amount of usage.
And that's a very fair comment. I think part of the job is to also include a maintenance schedule, maintenance requirements, how to properly maintain this. And we will follow that strictly, whether the town does it or we put this out to a third party to do it, we'll make sure that we follow it strictly. I do want to say though, with the existing field, I know I want to give credit to Mr. Horan and his group, they've overseeded, they've really stepped up and worked with Miss Mancuso on this too. And really, I think it has made a difference in the field and improved it. It's just, I think it's just, we're never going to achieve what we want out of the current field. That's the problem.
Okay, so Paul, I think when you told us what is it, VHP?
BHP.
Okay, that VHB, that one of the things that you really liked about them is that they're committed to dealing with stakeholders. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, they believe in working with stakeholders
Okay.
and
So in your meeting with Melissa and whoever from the administration, are you going to put a plan out to engage the stakeholders in conversation about this? 'Cause I
yes,
think they need to meet with the users, some of the user groups to find out, and then have a conversation with them at that stakeholder meeting about the overuse. And I think also from the environmental committee and some of the folks who have done a lot of work on natural fields who didn't want the turf, they've got information.
Yeah,
And so I think these folks should,
Jonathan Poor and Rich Wenner have like a ton of information on this.
right.
I've
Just don't have them at the same meeting because then the consultant will quit.
Right.
I have a question. Have we ever had just like, I mean, I know our fields are managed both by REC and by DPW. Have we ever had like one field manager who kind of looks at both, like the maintenance usage? And I mean, maybe that's something you want to consider again.
We've put this out years back. We put this out to Lincoln Landscaping and other managers like Vic, Mr. Luke. I think you know the history better than I do of the field, but certainly when I was here, we put this out to Lincoln Landscaping, and I don't think it had a significant difference or improvement in the performance of the field.
But they didn't also look at the usage of the field.
No.
Like I'm just wondering,
No.
like I know Missy's the one who goes out to check the field status to see if they need to be open or not. And I know then it goes to DPW. I'm just curious if it would be advantageous to have one person who's kind of like under their purview is fields, and they're the ones who kind of coordinate everything, because I think there is a link between usage and maintenance and all.
No, you're absolutely correct. So BHB is going to do that in the design, and they're going to come up with design documents that we should follow. But I think you're talking once it's constructed, having one person, and I think that's something that is worthy of a discussion. Sure.
Well, this is exactly what the Fields Committee, one of their the points of a Fields Committee is to have that advisory committee as a working group that coordinates some of this stuff once we have the engineering of it done. And this is what we've been talking about, that yes, usage is part of the equation, the solution here.
But I want to be clear about REC in that their only involvement is, they determine on a day-by-day basis if the field is appropriate for play. That's typically after rain. And they schedule the fields. If they had indication from the township committee that we should reduce field usage to a specific number, they could comply with that. But our interest has been to accommodate as many groups as we can. So if you put this under a single person but keep the rules the same, I expect you'll have the same outcome, right? So if you guys want to reduce field usage, we can do that. We should make that decision and give that indication to REC. I don't think that they need a single point person or a subcommittee to help them on that. They can reduce field usage.
What we need are
it-
parameters on the field, on what kind of reduction we need. So Paul, is that something that we would get from the engineers looking, that they would give us the parameters of what the usage should be?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, based on my research, it's 600 to 800 hours for a grass field, and we're upwards of 12 to 18 and 1,500 hours. That's our usage. So, we have to find a way to carve out some of that usage to limit the time that people are playing on the field, not play after it rains, let the field rest. So there's, when you have a grass field, you have to treat it more delicately.
So I believe in the past, and Mike, you can confirm this, that the rec does confer with DPW about field use and closing and things like that. Do they not?
Not so much about field use, but closing and opening the
Yeah.
field, whatever
That's what
advice.
I meant. I meant that whether it should be used after a storm or a situation, you guys are in constant contact.
Yeah, I'm in constant contact with Melissa. And to go back to the field, there's been other mitigating factors. There's a lot of people out there running their dogs off leashes. And, I know we've had some emails about people who, animals on the field, they're burrowing holes. And there's been, some accidents throughout the year with people, tripping in holes. And we've gone out several times to, obviously fill these things because you want the field safe for, kids and children to be able to run out there and not worry about twisting, an ankle or, dislocating a knee or anything like that. So, there's been, a lot of, issues out there aside from just field usage alone.
So I think, when in this process from the get-go, we've got to make it clear, and I think it was clear from the citizens who voted not to have a synthetic turf, that if we're going to have a natural turf, a natural field, that there are limits to the use. And we've said that, I mean, that was the debate in the election.
Of course, but we also said that we would look at field utilization across the town and with our neighboring towns so that we can meet the needs in the best way possible while maintaining it as a natural field. And that's the part that we're never doing. We're never talking about the second point. We're focusing on, well, let's make DeHart a little bit better, and we're gonna make it a little bit better. And then we might even tell some groups they can't use it anymore, but we're still left with the same common denominator, that we're not meeting an essential need. Now, for some people, this is not an essential need, but I think just as hardcore the citizens were to vote in favor of maintaining that as a natural field, because it's the only park in their neighborhood in particular, we also have the same amount of visible support for finding a solution that meets, equitable solution that meets the needs of our students and our kids for playtime, so outdoors. So that's the part that's always missing in this discussion.
Well, just one thing I want to respond, Dean. We're not doing a little improvement. We're doing a big improvement to DeHart Park. And you're right. It does.
Big
Yeah.
improvement.
So it does have to get factored into the overall usage, how the schools. Yeah, there has to be a global conversation.
Right.
And there used to be a group. I thought there was a group
So
of
we're
field.
having those conversations, just to backtrack. In Health and Community Services Committee, I thought Missy was supposed to be putting together a list of currently of who's using it and how many hours they're using the fields, because the schools aren't actually using our fields anymore. They're using South Orange and they're using their own fields. So I thought we were going to start and to create that policy that you're talking about, Vic, start looking about who's using it and then see what the policy is. We've talked about having to raise fees. We've talked about having to make sure our rec programs have priority. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked on the municipal partnership group about getting a overall viewpoint of the South Orange fields, the school fields, and the Maplewood fields about collecting data. And so that's something that I know I've spoken to Nubia that we're going to continue to figuring out this year. So I think there are these global conversations happening. I think sometimes it's just not happening quickly, which gets frustrating.
Anyway.
I can request again the list of all the groups using all of our fields, how many hours that means for each field, and then we can talk about, if cuts are appropriate and at what level.
And
I
Dean
have
is
an
accurate that
email that said specific data points also that that at least Huawei at the time was looking for, that I think South Orange provided, but I'm not sure Maplewood ever provided. So I'll dig that up.
Thank you.
And the conversation does have to be broader than DeHart, because we've all seen the overuse of Borden Park too.
Right.
And how it turns into a mud pit over there.
Maple,
And that's kind of why I would like think about like a fields manager, someone who's looking holistically at all of our fields. And this is just, they're working on it versus piecemeal in different departments.
That's,
So
that's what DPW is responsible for the field maintenance.
this whole
And they should take
conversation,
But they don't
all
do
of this is
all
what can
the
happen in the
field
field.
maintenance, and then the recreation should work off of DPW's. They should work together, and that's what they do.
Right.
You're not gonna have a field czar and then you're gonna have them running over two departments. It just doesn't work that way. Recreation knows how to schedule programs. They run the programs.
But there's also the side of, you know, we need to have programs to have kids outside, or what kind of programming do you want to do? And then working with DPW to figure out how to do it. Like, I hear what you're saying, but you're saying DPW is the lead on field and then rec just follows whatever they do and programs what they can.
I didn't say that. I said DPW is responsible for
The
maintenance
maintenance, right?
and needs to coordinate with recreation, which is responsible for programs. And it's Patrick's responsibility to get them to work together. And he's done that. They've had meetings now on almost a weekly basis.
Weekly basis, yeah, and that's working, right? All of that is working properly. The problem is there is a decision so far that we want to schedule fields to the greatest extent we can. And so that means that every hour a field is open, if there's a request, generally we honor it. That means we have 1,800 hours of play at the heart. So the issue isn't a lack of coordination between departments. The issue always goes back to there's an overuse of fields, and that's a policy decision.
I tell you, Patrick, I've been on the township committee all these years. I've never voted to have the fields used as much as you're saying. The township committee has never said to overuse the fields. We said always the opposite.
If that's fine, I think that direction needs to be maybe clearer understood. And that's a policy decision. I think that it's still not an issue about coordination between departments, and we can still get the data from rec and present it to the township committee and draw a bright line on what we think the appropriate number of hours are for each field.
All right, then the data that Deb's requesting needs to be gathered as soon as possible. Because I think what you're hearing at this meeting is that we have to control overuse because we're spending a lot of money to improve the fields and rebuild the fields and maintain the fields. So let's make sure, and that includes the other groups that come in from out of town. We need to enforce that they can't be playing there on organized fields at Maple Crest every Sunday, right?
Mhm.
So.
Well, I think, again, what I agree with bits and pieces of what everyone is saying. I agree that this is not an issue of lack of coordination between departments, 100%. I think this is an issue of utilization. We have never, just like I always scream from the mountaintop about municipal facility utilization plan, never happened yet. Keep talking about it every year. This is the same thing with field utilization. And we have a lot of coaches and mommies and daddies who are part of user groups who use our fields throughout town and in South Orange, who raise their hand to say, hey, listen, we're aware of the usage. We're aware of the need. We want to raise our hand and advise the committee, the township committee and the township as to utilization. And then we all can do what we need to do after we receive that advisory opinion. And, you know, people have raised their hand to do that, and we have not engaged them. And perhaps we should.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think we can do it with the conversation we just had, getting the data we need and deciding as the governing body how much usage we want to direct the departments to do and how to maintain it. Because now, as Patrick said, it's a policy issue. And as Vic said, we've never really set a policy, although I think in all these conversations, we've totally been, you know, talking about it. So if you need a strict policy from the township committee, then we'll need to develop one.
I think this, much like the bike lanes where you need the community buy-in, you need the community buy-in on this. We can't just make a policy that comes from us without stakeholder input. It will not go
We've
over
had
well.
so
Really need to
yeah,
include.
we've had so much input on this. I don't know that we're going to find anything else. We can have a community meeting and say, give us your input, and the input's going to be what it's already been. We want to use it. We want to use it as much as we want to use it. And that's just, so I don't know what other new information we would be.
No,
able-
I don't mean just a community meeting. I think that we follow through on the Fields Committee, and that's where we get the input, because we've made that promise to the community and to get their input through this. And I think that's what Dean's talking about by people raising their hands and wanting to be part of this.
There is no
So
Fields Committee.
no, well, it was created, but
No,
it
it
was
was
never.
created by Frank McGeehee and
Yeah,
then
it was
never
created
went
on
anywhere.
its own without talking to anybody else.
It never went anywhere. So look, we have a recreation committee, and I bet you, and I don't have it in front of me, but I bet you if you look at what their charge is, it's exactly this kind of stuff.
You mean in health and community
No,
services?
no, I'm talking about a recreation advisory committee. You look at the ordinance that set that up, and I am absolutely sure it talks about having these conversations. How to utilize, how to run programs, how to utilize facilities, advise the rec department.
I think some of the
Okay, we
issue
leave
just
that in
comes
there.
back,
Okay. I'll
just
look at
comes
that.
down to the fact that we don't have that much space. I mean, South Orange is dealing with the same thing with the Baird and the basketball courts. They're overscheduled and people can't use them unless you're like an organized sport. So I think it's just like, we're always going to have this problem. And so it goes back to that policy decision, to your point, that and then it does go back to stakeholder engagement as well, because if we say we have to limit the amount of field, no, you can't play here anymore, there's still going to be an uproar because people want their kids to be able to play locally. They want their kids to be able to go outside, exercise, whether it's an organized sport, whether it's a pickup game, whether it's just going out to play. Like, people talk about that all the time. Like, oh, when I was growing up, I can just go get a basketball game. I can just go throw the football around. Like, now there's no space to just go enjoy activity, even if you don't play a sport. So it's just, we don't have enough land.
I gotta say, there's no kids playing outside. And when I moved here in '89, there were kids everywhere after school playing outside. Now they're inside. So it doesn't have to be public facilities. People have space, streets, whatever. The only place I see kids playing is on Park Avenue when you come up from Valley, and they're all playing near that dead end over there. I'm
Well,
just
I would
saying,
guess
there's
that
also ways to.
the demographics have changed a little bit, that there's a lot more dual working families, so kids maybe aren't coming home and playing at home.
There were still work. I'm just saying, I hear that all the time, that kids need exercise and we need to provide fields. We have parks. We have, and most people who live here have some sort of lawn or a park nearby. And so I just don't, I think there needs to be some personal responsibility of making sure your kids get outside to have exercise, but
Right.
we don't
But
need to go.
we're not passing ordinances for that. We are responsible for maintaining the public space. We challenge Patrick to have better communication and coordination between the DPW and community services, and that is working. He implemented those meetings. The conversation goes on all the time. And but if Patrick thinks that there's some kind of mandate from the township committee to let everybody use our parks, well, we need to change that. We need you to manage. But it's not just the leagues. The YMCA uses our parks, big chunk of it. So I mean, there are some realities out there, but I think we're going to make some major improvements to DeHart. There's no question that just like when we do a road, if we put a stop sign there or speed humps there, those cars go on other streets. If we do something with DeHart and only deal with DeHart, they're going to be overusing Maplecrest or overusing Memorial or overusing Bordered. So we've got to figure out how to make all this work. And I would say that you don't need a parks committee. You have a recreation advisory committee, and that's what they should be doing.
Right. Agreed on that. Agreed. We don't need another committee. I'm fine with that. But again, I don't think, because we hear from these people all the time, I don't think that we have a regular stakeholder engagement, meaning the users of our parks and fields. to get them together every year and say, okay, what is the need? This is the time. We can accommodate this. We can accommodate you. Oh, hey, you over there, you know how you book every year and you never use the space? Going forward, we're not going to give it to you anymore. Sorry, we have all these other groups too. This is a local group versus an external group. Who is doing that? No one is doing that.
Melissa
we do
does
that.
that. Melissa
do
does
that now.
That's
every
where it
year.
comes down to first seeing who's actually using the field and having a time and prioritizing. And we've also looked at use, like the fees. Like, I don't know that people are paying enough of a user fee to use our field.
But I think Melissa meets every year, Pat, right? With the clubs,
Yes.
with the
Yes.
organizers, with the coaches, and they determine who gets what field when.
There's like a user
All
group.
the users meet at one time. Now, you may have recommendations for how that could work differently, and I think those would be well received. But the groups are meeting in one room together to argue about how much field usage each group is going to get.
Right, but that is of recent development. It has not been a historical thing.
No,
It's
that's exactly what's been going on. That's
I
not.
think this is the third year. I think it started my first year that I was on.
Yeah, a couple of years ago it started, exactly.
Right, we started it and we've
Okay,
been doing it.
so it is happening. We may need to have it happen differently or better, but it is happening. There is coordination, but there needs to be a plan. I think Deborah's request for more information is good. We can see what the demand is, who's using it. Are we charging the appropriate fees? I mean, we just went through this at Woodland and Bert, and look, we just, Lydia Johnson, we adjusted her schedule to allow other people to use it. We've gone through some of these things, and it isn't easy, but we've done it. Okay. Anything else on the parks? Paul, anything else on DeHart?
All I have
Just
at this
make
time.
just make sure that we, these stakeholder meetings, if you need guidance, you have 5 people here who are willing to give you guidance for anything you want. Okay. We're running out of time, so we're not going to go through the rest of this list unless someone has a particular issue they want to bring up. I'm just going to go down. Civic House, Greenhouse, heat pump at police. Hilton
I want
Branch.
to know what's going on with the Civic House. Like, we rent that out to
Civic House.
the Y.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. This is just about our repairs to the Civic House. If you want to talk about utilization, I would
I can
suggest
give you an update, Molly.
talk
I'll
to
circulate
Patrick.
you the lease.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay. Village parking lot. Anything on that, Paul?
The railing's going in next week, the black powder coated railing.
Okay. Fresco site, duck pond. That's done. Oh, the duck pond. That's a whole nother matter. All accessible playground. Patrick, you told us that I saw the RFP bid went out.
Yep. When do we open that, Dave?
That opens on January 22. The pre-meeting was held this past Monday. We have a lot of interest.
Okay. And then what's the next stage? That's a consultant hiring?
Yeah, so we'll
Correct,
award
yeah.
a contract to somebody for the design. Included in the RFP and the requirements of the contractor will be community meetings to get a little bit more input, and then they'll issue a package.
So are they taking the design that we already have and actually like formalizing it or whatnot?
Yeah, we included what we've already developed in the bid package, right? So they understand where our starting point is. I think that may need to be tweaked a little bit because it was more of a conceptual design, but we put a lot of work into that conceptual design, and we have a lot of feedback from the public in response to that conceptual design. So yeah, we're starting off at a really good place.
And what's the timeline like overall? Like, how long does it take this phase and then what happens next?
Yeah, we expect construction would be fall of this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How long do you think it'll take to do?
I'd have to go back and look at our timeline. Dave's given more thought to it, though. It's going to be a couple months of construction.
Yeah, it's something that could, if all cylinders hit right, we could be opening for the summer of summer 26.
And the parking lot is being considered too, to make sure we have accessible parking and ways to get to the,
Yes, parking lot and also the bathrooms.
thank you.
Okay, we talked, the senior bus we dealt with last night, the senior bus, you're getting striped, right, Paul?
We're gonna have a design placed on it. We did take delivery and we submitted for reimbursement through CDBG. So if Joe K hasn't gotten a 90K yet, it's forthcoming.
Yeah, when do we think it's gonna get on the road? That's what people want to know.
I think fairly soon. There was an issue right now with the bus starting. We had an issue that's getting worked out right now. They have people coming out to try to get it fixed. But yeah, I think, you know, as soon as we have the design on the bus, you know, we could schedule with whomever, Miss Mancuso.
And driver training?
Once we get the bus up and running, we're gonna schedule all the people in the jitney route to come out and do a bit of a crash course on it, get used to it. But they're supposed to be coming, sorry, Paul, there's supposed to be someone coming out Thursday. They believe it's a programming issue with the starter, so hopefully it's a quick, easy fix.
These are some of the growing pains, you know, with switching over to electric, but.
Correct.
Okay. Jitneys, we had a resolution last night for the fire stations, EV charging at
Can I
town
ask
hall.
one more question on that? On the, sorry, the electric buses. Is the electric senior bus like the same bus that the electric jitneys
No.
are gonna be?
No.
So they have to get trained twice?
Senior bus is much smaller. The jitney buses seat 40 people. The senior bus seats 14.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a bigger bus. It's just a jitney sized bus.
But the training is like the same, like if you're trained the jitney driver?
It may not be. I think the operation's gonna be the same.
Okay, thank you.
It's just, it's a bigger bus, that's all.
Don't forget to charge it.
Okay, natural resource inventory, municipal water storage, stormwater utility, we're moving forward, Paul, we're going to discuss the credit policy one more time and then introduce it in February and approve it in February, so we'll be on track. Okay, any old business, Paul? Any new business?
I just want to indicate one thing. We did have that stormwater structure that was compromised on Baker Street and Maplewood Ave. It's currently plated. It's not affecting anyone, but our design consultant is coming up with revised plans for that. Their structural engineer.
Where is that?
So we had solicited pricing for that work and you know didn't get proper pricing on that, and you know we're gonna resubmit that with a revised design. So that's what they're working on now.
Anybody have anything else? Anybody want to keep
I don't
meeting?
think so.
All right,
Stay on the
got a
whole.
lot of stuff to do, Paul. You should be able to handle this. So at the next meeting, we want a list of everything you've accomplished in the last
No problem.
30 days.
Happy to provide it.
Just take everything off this list that you can. All right. Well, thank you,
Thanks.
everybody. It's 10 o'clock. It's time to do whatever we have to do.
Good meeting.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, you, oh, no question. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.